As the cocoa sector faces a number of major challenges amid the coronavirus pandemic, Confectionery Production catches up with Rick Scobey, the president of the World Cocoa Foundation, to discuss some of these issues, including deforestation, the fluctuating price of cocoa around the world, and how the organisation is driving towards creating greater levels of sustainability within the market, which includes tackling the key issue of child labour usage, as well as examining the living income differential, which is designed to help make farmers' lives better in key markets of Ghana and the Ivory Coast.
I had a background in public policy, agriculture, and international economic development, and worked at the World Bank for some 30 years on a variety of countries and issues related to agriculture and environment. And after a long slog in an international bureaucracy, I was very keen to return to my true passion of working more directly with farmers on issues of poverty reduction. And I thought the World Cocoa Foundation was an extraordinary opportunity to engage in public-private collaboration, because it's an unusual sector in that you have two countries in West Africa, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, which account for some 60% of production. And you have about 10 global companies which account for some 80% of usage. So with this small set of actors, it seemed that there was real opportunity to influence change and make a difference. And Neill, what's quite remarkable is that this is an industry which is extremely connected to smallholder farmers. Cocoa is a crop that's grown 90% by individual farmers on land holdings about 3 to 4 hectares in size. There's almost no large scale or corporate or industrial production. So the companies who trade and process cocoa, or who make chocolate bars like Mars, Hershey, Nestle, Ferrero, they realize their future is entirely tied up with the health, the safety, and the sustainability of the livelihoods of cocoa farmers. And they spend a lot of effort and investment directly to work with those farmers. So it seemed like an incredibly exciting opportunity when they were recruiting the new president.
In terms of your time with the organisation, how far has it come in the years that you've been with it so far?
We have put in place a new strategy that more clearly focuses on 3 long-term sustainability challenges. The first is to promote prosperous farmers with sustainable livelihoods and ensure that they have a living income. The second is to support empowered communities that fully respect human rights, and particularly focus on ending the problem of child labor in the cocoa production farming. And then third is to strengthen the healthy planet and really address deforestation and climate change. So in my first 2 years, we focused on developing the new strategy in partnership with the WCF members. And then we have tried to launch new partnerships and collective action with companies and with the governments to tackle each of those specific problems and challenges of the prosperous farmers, the empowered communities, and the healthy planet. In my first year, we launched, as an example of a new approach to solving these problems, the Cocoa and Forests Initiative, where we, under the sponsorship of Prince Charles, brought together some 30 companies and the 2 governments in West Africa and agreed on a new public-private partnership that would spell out concrete actions and commitments to end deforestation. And Neill, it's that kind of model of increased partnership and collaboration of industry with government, and a focus on increasing investment and working through some of the policy requirements at the country level, that has been my real passion and focus. And I think that's what I brought more to WCF.
Fantastic stuff. And on that note, in terms of collaborative working, I'm not sure you saw, there was a recent report from, I think it's Fair Trade International, that was suggesting that there's been quite a lot of overlap in terms of sustainability schemes. How concerned are you by that apparent trend?
That's a very important finding, that there's a lot of overlap and duplication of individual company programs, which end up on the ground competing with each other. And so a focus of ours has been putting in place these joint programs of companies and government, which I think are the right solution for the problem of duplication and replication of effort.
Thank you for that. And just coming back to the scale of the task at hand, I mean, how concerned are you on a personal level that there is still a situation where in Ghana and Ivory Coast there are still over 2 million children in child labour at present?
Child labor definitely remains a persistent challenge in both countries, despite the major efforts over the past 10 to 20 years of the governments, of industry, of civil society organizations to address the problem. Our view is that child labor has no place in the cocoa supply chain, and we're very focused on addressing the root causes of child labor. As a result of our initiatives over the past few years, I think we now are in a much better position to understand the complex drivers or the root causes of child labor. And we have now piloted new kinds of programs and interventions that have demonstrated impact. So we think we're now at a turning point. We're ready to build a partnership with the government and financial and technical partners like UNICEF and ILO and the World Bank and the European Union, where we focus on scaling up these successful pilot programs to national level. And we think if we finally can close a joint framework of commitments of the industry, of government, of development partners, we will be able to significantly reduce child labor. Over the next few months, we are hoping to announce a new public-private partnership that's modeled on what we did with deforestation, where we lay out a series of specific company commitments and government commitments and specific investment targets that would lead to significant reduction in child labor by 2025, in line with the Sustainable Development Goal 8.7 that focuses on the elimination of child labor.
There's been some recent studies which suggest that, sadly, child labour within the cocoa sector has actually increased over the past decade. Is that something you're aware of, and how is there any way you can reverse that disturbing trend?
There have been several studies which have documented the prevalence of child labor. The good news is that if you look at child labor related to the volume of cocoa production, child labor is actually falling. Over the past 10 years, there was a 60% increase in cocoa production, which did not lead to a similar surge in the level of child labor. And the reason for that reduction in the rate of child labor in cocoa volume is because of the efforts of the government and industry to put in place new interventions, new programs that more effectively monitor the existence of child labor, and then when it's detected, put in place remediation programs that take the kids out of the worst forms of child labor, make sure they're in school, and provide other kinds of services. So child labor remains a problem. The industry is very concerned about it, but we're very encouraged by the positive results we've seen over the past few years related to child labor rates falling as measured by cocoa volumes, the significant increase in the number and percentage of children attending school. I think in Cote d'Ivoire now, we've reached school attendance rates higher than 80%, and it's almost 100% in Ghana. And so these are very important and impressive achievements over the past couple of years. So with this new effort to build in public-private partnership that addresses the root causes of child labor, Neill, I think we will see a continued significant improvement in child labor issues. The building block of sustainability in the cocoa sector is absolutely a living income for farmers. We need to make sure that farmers and their families receive fair remuneration for their crop, which provide a sustainable and fair living standard. There are several important elements to ensuring a living income for farmers. The first is to improve the productivity and profitability of cocoa farming. Our goal is to grow more cocoa, but on less land, so that each farmer will have higher yields on a smaller footprint of land. And that's important not only for climate change and sustainable land use, but it also frees up their most important asset of land for other kinds of activities. The second important element is what you're flagging, which is income and crop diversification. Already, most cocoa farmers have significant diversification, and they rely on other agricultural crops to supplement household income. But the governments and industry believe it's important to invest in more diversification, which will build in resilience and provide some risk management when crops are affected by poor weather or low prices. Third important element is obviously, besides improving the cocoa productivity and profitability, second, supporting income and crop diversification. Third important element is just assuring that farmers receive a fair price and fair remuneration for their crops. There's no question that the price of cocoa is a top driver of farmer incomes and livelihoods. So that's why the companies have been committed to paying extra premium on top of official prices for any cocoa which is demonstrated to be grown without child labor and deforestation, which typically has involved some kind of third-party certification and validation that the cocoa was sustainably grown. And in addition to the payment of some additional premiums, all companies who are sourcing cocoa from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are also implementing the new living income differential that Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana introduced for the 2020-21 crop season to boost farmer incomes. They've mandated that on top of the future market price that prevails in the marketplace, each buyer of cocoa needs to pay an additional $400 per ton of cocoa as a living income differential. And that latter $400 a ton equates to almost $1.2 billion in additional revenue for cocoa farmers on top of the official market prices. So I think those are the key levers for assuring the living income and sustainable life.
Obviously, with regard to coronavirus, it's hit the whole world in a number of aspects, and the farming community sadly is not immune from that. And I understand that cocoa prices have gone down significantly over the past few months, and there's been a lot of logistical issues in getting crops out there. How concerned are you about the impact?
Directly. Since WCF doesn't have a mandate on the commercial or market side, we don't track very closely what's happening with global demand. But we've all read in the article in the press that there's clearly a global recession, which is associated with a slower consumption of cocoa products, leading to less demand, leading to impact on prices. Fortunately, in the producing countries, at least in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, the impact on the ground of coronavirus has been more limited. Both governments have put in place very prevention and detection measures. So the industry has been quite active in responding to the COVID risk in cocoa growing communities. First, individual companies have made large-scale contributions at a global level, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars to organizations like Red Cross, the World Health Organization, and UNICEF. And we'd be delighted. In addition to that very strong individual company response, World Cocoa Foundation, in partnership with some of our sister organizations, raised about $830,000 from some 30 companies to directly support COVID education and prevention in cocoa growing communities in 6 countries. And we've provided and we've dispersed the funding to Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire through CARE, to Cameroon through UNICEF, to Brazil and Indonesia through the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, and to Ecuador through the Lutheran World Relief. Then at the third level, very much at the individual community level, it's been remarkable and very encouraging to see companies making a lot of individual donations of water supplies, of protection equipment, of soap to the cocoa communities and cooperatives that they partner with. So I'm very pleased and proud that the industry has very early and quickly recognized the risk that COVID poses for cocoa growing communities, and it's responded very seriously.
Itself, you have your partnership meeting coming up in November, and that's unfortunately had to switch to a virtual format. Can you tell us what people can expect from that?
As always, a downturn presents opportunities, and so we're very excited to reimagine our annual partnership meeting as a virtual event. Our partnership meeting is the only industry-led global event dedicated to cocoa sustainability. Last year in Berlin illustrated the importance and the power of this kind of networking and learning and knowledge sharing event. I think we had more than 80 speakers and about 400 participants from some 35 countries coming together in high-level policy discussions and sharing perspectives and information. Given the lockdown and the inability of people to travel, we've now decided, we first looked at just canceling the partnership meeting, and then we said, in this brave new world of communication platforms, let's do something more ambitious and exciting with a virtual online partnership meeting. And we're now working with some IT experts to really build a dynamic format and content that will take into consideration the fact that, we've got everybody around the world locked in their computers joining these kinds of meetings. So we're actually expecting more engagement from a wider set of people, both farmers at the grassroots level and senior executives and government officials or the political level. We're putting in place a set of issues and topics that will focus on what are the emerging new challenges right now in the cocoa sector, which include things like what will be the longer term impact of COVID on rural communities. If we were to take a social justice lens to the cocoa sector, what might be the important interventions and priorities? We know that the European Union is focused on due diligence legislation. What might be the options and opportunities for leveraging human rights due diligence to accelerate sustainability in the cocoa sector? What will be the key priorities in the new child labor partnership that we're hoping to announce in the fall? What's the next generation of actions to address climate change and deforestation? We were very proud of the report that came out last month from the World Resources Institute that showed our Cocoa and Forest Initiative was one of the few positive signs in what's otherwise a very upsetting global picture of deforestation. What can we do to really replicate the CFI experience in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire to other countries in West Africa and Latin America? So we see a lot of meaty topics that will lend itself to this kind of virtual format. So stay tuned.